Logging on now. Chuck, why don't you start recording and I'll start the meeting.
The recording is starting. I don't know whether you could see in the upper left-hand corner, yes. It says recording.
Mm-hmm.
So we are recording the event.
Okay, so let's start. Assalamu alaikum, welcome and greetings to our event, The Importance of the Muslim Vote. My name is Janish Rahim. I'm familiar to many of you, and I'm here for the Coalition Against Islamophobia's event today to highlight how important the Muslim vote is. Oftentimes Muslims, we are at the tail end in the country, and we're not unified in doing our civic duty. So it's very, very important that Muslims up and down the country, especially here in Westchester County, we're making sure that this is a grassroots movement, that we unify and we do the basic civic duty, which is to vote. Voting is so important because not only at a national level, but at a local level, it makes a huge, huge difference. And we urge everyone to understand the importance of your vote. Oftentimes we don't think it's important. We put it to one side. We don't think our vote makes a difference. I hear that a lot from a lot of people. So we're here to speak about the importance. We have a very packed agenda, and I'm going to go through that in a second. So let me go to the agenda. So we're going to have an introduction from our president, Dr. Chuck Chesnavage. He's going to speak a little bit about what the WCAI is, how it was formed, and a little bit about this event as well. Then we'll do some key information. So a lot of people get lost in the numbers. What are the dates? What are the numbers? When can I vote? How do I vote? Things like that. And Muslim numbers as well, specifically how many Muslims there are in the, how many of them are registered to vote? What are the swing states? How do we play a part in that? And what are the numbers here in Westchester County? And then we're going to have two of our notable members of WCAI, Khusro Ali and Dr. T.A. Bashir, who are going to speak to some of the issues that are important to the Muslim community. So by voting, these issues are addressed, and we can hold our elected officials accountable to make sure that they understand what is important to the Muslim community. And then we'll have our keynote speaker, Sister Afaf, Nasher, who is the Executive Director of CAIR in New York. And we'll have a quick Q&A session with Afaf, and Sister Afaf Nasher will then highlight some of the important issues and go into a little bit more detail about what her organization has been doing in the run-up to the election. And then we have been given a lot of video messages from officials who couldn't join us today, but are supporters of WCAI. They understand the importance of this organization and the awareness that we're trying to create. And then we'll have an open discussion, some panel comments from the WCAI panel, and some Q&A as well. This is open to everybody who joins. So if you want to ask a question, please feel free to ask questions. Scattered throughout the meeting, we're going to have some fun. So we're going to have some polls that are taking place. So Mark is going to put some polls up at the end of each segment so that we can vote, and it'll give us a sense of where we are as an organization, as a community, and give us some insight into how we think. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our president, Dr. Chuck Chesnavage. Chuck.
Thank you very much, Janesh, and assalamu alaikum to everyone. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome. It's so good to have you with us for this Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia event. The Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia is a grassroots association of concerned individuals, non-Muslim and Muslim, committed to opposing bigotry and discrimination against Islam and its faithful, and to defending the civil rights of all. The appearance in August 2012 of Islamophobic ads on local Metro North train platforms catalyzed our formation. Through public education, engagement with social service, peace and justice, faith-based and interfaith organizations, and outreach to public officials, We seek to assure that our Muslim neighbors feel secure in their physical safety and their fundamental human rights. We urge county residents, government officials, community organizers, and clergy to express solidarity with Westchester's Muslims, to reaffirm respect for all religious traditions, to reject ethnic and religious prejudice, and defend the constitutional rights. We are happy to host this afternoon's Get Out the Vote for the Muslim Community panel presentation because of the importance of participating in not only the election of the President of the United States, but any local public officials seeking office. Given a reported 60% of the United States population voting and voter suppression laws further limiting the vote, every vote is extremely important. And that is why we are encouraging voting within the Muslim community. Deadlines for early voting and mail-in ballots or the traditional voting in person on November 3rd are extremely important to fulfilling your civic obligations to vote. While the number of registered Muslim voters has increased, Muslims still lag behind other faith communities at 78% compared to higher levels in other faith communities. We are well aware of some of the issues on the table for this upcoming election, notably a Muslim travel ban, restrictive immigration laws for those seeking asylum and refugee status, the targeting of citizens who have had temporary protected status or TPS for many years. We have had our own incidents of Islamophobia here in Westchester County, in the Mount Vernon Fire Department during Ramadan, with an Islamophobic social media posting that stated Muslims should be prohibited from running for public office, among other insulting and ignorant statements. We are very happy to have joining us later the mayor of Mount Vernon, Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard. Incidents of Islamophobia have increased during this current administration, along with incidents of anti-Semitism and racism magnified by murders and abuse at the hands of some members in law enforcement, leading to ongoing protests led by the Black Lives Matter movement with widespread support. Numerous statements were issued by various Muslim and social justice organizations after the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, an African-American Muslim in Texas. The purpose of today's presentation is to encourage every US citizen, be they Muslim or non-Muslim, to vote according to their conscience. Inshallah, the best candidate will win to lead our country into the future. Thank you very much for again attending today's very important presentation.
Thank you. I'm now going to go into a few numbers, some key information for this election. A lot of the time people get lost in the numbers, they get lost in the dates. So this is a very different election. There are different options available to us. So I'm going to go into some of the key things that we should be focused upon. I will come to that in a second. So key information, the election numbers. In the United States of America, there are roughly, and these numbers differ by site to site slightly, but there are 3.5 million Muslims in the United States. That's about 1% of the population. And there are about 1 million, just over 1 million Muslims that are registered to vote. That number was roughly the same about a few years ago in the last election. So we can read between the lines on that a little bit. So we need to do a little bit better to try and get that number up. And I know that there are a lot of organizations like CAIR and Engage and a few others trying to do that. Sister Afaf Nasher will be speaking to that shortly. The concentrations for those numbers are kind of high in key swing states. So we might not think the Muslim vote matters but we can swing an entire state. I'll give you an example. In Michigan, the Republicans won the election by less than 10,000 votes last time out. And there are 270,000 Muslim voters in Michigan alone. So just think about how that could have worked out. That could have swung the election and things could have been a lot different. So the Muslim vote does matter. If you break things down locally here, in Westchester, we have 20,000 Muslims in Westchester alone, just in our county. 16,000 of those Muslims, 16,000 of us are of voting age. That's a huge number. So if you think about the issues and what's important to us, which we're going to go into in a little while, we can make sure that the elected officials listen. Because if we make our voices known, and you can only make that known if you vote. So if you don't vote by November 3rd, don't complain November 4th. We have no right to do that. That's important for us to know that. And if you don't have the ability to vote because you're not a citizen, I'm sure you know people who are. So it's incumbent upon you to do your duty, to try and reach out to as many people as possible and get them to vote, so that the issues that are important to us as the Muslim community in Westchester and nationally are taken care of, and the elected officials that we put into office know that we are a community that needs to listen to. I'm going to go into some dates before I hand over to two of my colleagues. So there are 16 days until the election, 2 weeks. The registration to vote has closed. You should have been registered by now. So hopefully everyone here is registered. Early in-person voting starts October 24th and finishes November 1st. And it differs by area. So look up your local county or local township website to see the different places where you can vote. There's various locations. You can request an absentee ballot now, and you must have that in, get that done by October 27th. An absentee ballot must be received by November 3rd. Polls open 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in New York State. And if you need more information, please make a note of that website that we have on the screen. There are various websites that give you this information. We've just noted one down, which is a state site. So make a note of that, go to that site, find the different locations you can vote, the different ways you can vote, and get involved. Get involved, take people to the polls if they need to, help them out now that you know the information, and let's get our voter turnout to be as high as possible. I'm now gonna hand over to two of my colleagues, Khusro Ali and Dr. T.A. Bashir, both of the WCAI as well, to speak about issues that we hold dear to the Muslim community here. So I'm going to hand over. Khusro, are you on the phone?
I am on the phone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I'll be quick about it. I really want to talk about what are the issues that are important to Muslims, because we want to bring them to the attention of the people that we are voting for, whoever it is. And these have been long-standing issues. The biggest issue, of course, is Islamophobia, which is a perception about 1.8 billion people. You know, they are not homogenous, but there are 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. And they are tarnished with the wrong image, and they are categorized generally here in the United States as terrorists. And so therefore, we tend to, that is the origin of Islamophobia. There are three quick points that I want to make, I think, which need to be addressed in order to start addressing the whole Islamophobia issue. The first one is, of course, paying attention to what is happening here, the prejudices against Muslims in employment, ripping off the hijabs of Muslim women on the streets because of everything else. So addressing the open discrimination within the United States that is happening. It's happening to others also. There's anti-Semitism going on, but there's also Islamophobia going on. The second part is that partly as a result of this, the immigration laws are slanted in a manner that they discriminate against Muslims coming in. Now, Muslims have a lot to offer the United States. And if they're discriminated against, then that is unfair to start off with because they're being singled out, and it strengthens the Islamophobia image. But it's also enhancing the negative image of Muslims. The third one, which is just as important as anything else, is the huge amounts of financial aid which is being given to Israel. And that, I believe, is not being used because Israel feels that is threatened by Muslims and Muslim countries around the world, whether rightly or wrongly. And they are using that to promote a negative image in order to justify their policies. They want to promote a negative image about the Palestinians, and they're using those funds to occupy Palestinians in their own homeland and deny them the right. So we certainly want the whole issue of aid to Israel. You know, Israel is an ally country where we have nothing against them, but the misuse of financial aid is something that we want to be examined. And I think that will go a long way in addressing the Islamophobia that there is there. I think I'm running out of time, but these are the 3 points that I wanted to bring across to our representatives.
Thank you, Khusro.
And if you want to mention the one on the screen that Khusro left out, number 4.
Yeah, I'll mention that, Khusro, if you don't see it. So we also, a lot of people I speak to are obviously very, very concerned with foreign policy as well. Foreign policy towards Muslim countries, specifically in Muslim communities. If you take the Uyghur Muslims in China, if you take the Indian Muslims in India, regarding the and the CAIR that was passed early at the turn of the year, these are things which are horrific. It seems like the international community is turning a blind eye to many of these. So the important thing is, if we hold our elected officials accountable to speak up in whatever forum, whatever setting, it's important. So this is something we should always be speaking about. This is always something that we should bring to their attention, so they use their platform so that something is being said about this. Otherwise, this continues to be in the background.
No, absolutely important, very important point. So yeah, thank you for filling in that blank. I agree. The foreign policy tends to be anti-Muslim.
Thank you, Khusro. Dr. Bashir, I'm not sure if Dr. Bashir, he's our vice president of WCAI, is on the line. Bashir, are you there?
He is here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Bashir. So okay. Why don't you go ahead and add your points as well to some of the issues that are important to the Muslim community and things that you've been involved in recently.
Alhamdulillah. Shukran. I agree with all my colleagues that preceded me. I want to talk about the areas that I work in, basically the Spanish-speaking community and also the African-American community. African-Americans have been here in America before the ratification of the Constitution of the United States. And since that time, they have been dealt with in terms of unjust legal procedures and also being killed in the streets, shot down like dogs. And this has continued for a while. The reason why I bring this up is because there is an apathy that I've noticed in the African-American and also the Spanish-speaking community because those who voted in the past don't see any change. But some of us, like Brother Oz had mentioned, is our own fault. We vote people in and we don't follow them, nor do we hold their feet to the fire. This time we have to change. Some of the things that's going on, as Kersel had mentioned, needs to be understood and need our attention directed toward it. And we just can't vote. We have to vote. We have to follow up on the vote, and we have to have politicians who are partners with us, not politicians that just want to be have an office and don't do anything for the community. And we're talking about the entire community, the Muslim community and all of those who are our neighbors. We need to change the dialectics that's going on here, and we need to vote strongly. I was previously not a big supporter of the vote, but now I see that we need this more than ever, and we also need to follow up on what we did. This is just a start. Voting is a start for us to start reclaiming back our political and legal rights in this country. So today, I urge you very strongly, despite what went on in the past, and I know the feelings that you have, and I understand and I honor that, but we need to change the dynamics that we did previously in terms of voting and expecting people to carry out what we need for our community on a trust basis. We have to follow up. So start today by voting. I'm T.A. Bashir, the Vice President of Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia, and I'm signing off with Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Great message. Thank you, Khusro. Thank you, Dr. Bashir. Somebody messaged me letting me know that while I was presenting, I didn't put the numbers on the screen for what I was presenting before. So I'm going to put that up on the screen while I introduce our keynote speaker today. So while I introduce the keynote speaker, just make a note of some of the things that I put up on the screen so that you have this in your arsenal to speak about, because all of us, when we walk away from here, we need to be able to reference these numbers. We need to be able to educate everyone around us.
Exactly.
I'm going to move to the next one and give them these key dates that are on the screen, because people will get lost. There will be a mad rush on November 3rd. And there's an easy way to get this done. There's an easy way to make sure that the voter turnout is high. And that's by education, by making sure we pass this information on to as many people as possible, Muslim or non-Muslim. It's very important that we all turn out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker today. She's a big supporter of WCAI. She's been in a couple of meetings with us before, and it's really good to see you. Sister Afaf Nasher, she is the Executive Director of CAIR New York. Sister Nasher, thank you for joining us today, and good to see you again.
So very good to see you too. Assalamu alaikum to all my brothers and sisters with Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia, and to all my brothers and sisters that are watching this program. I want to really give a big, huge prop to WCAI just for their effort in organizing this. It is extremely important that we are talking about this subject. And, you know, to Dr. Bashir, to Dr. Chezvanaj, to Priscilla, my friend who is now in Chicago, to my brother Khusro Ali, you know, all of you have worked with us in the past, and I'm really pleased to be here today. So Jazakumullah khairan for allowing me to join this really important program. I'm gonna jump right into it with your permission, because I feel like there's a lot to go over. And the first thing that I really want to speak to is the effort for registration, because that was already referenced earlier. And it's true that there was a time, subhanAllah, in which Muslims were actually not encouraged to vote. I remember from a younger age talking about this in the masajid, and people saying, no, you know, we cannot be politically active because this is not an Islamic government, and going through that. And, you know, I have to give my father credit here. Alhamdulillah, he used to actually call us, even if he was abroad, and he would say, did you guys vote? And he would make sure his absentee ballot was in place. And perhaps that's because he was from a country in which you didn't necessarily have that right. It wasn't easy to vote. Elections weren't democratic as they are here. And so the knowledge of how important to vote was is something that he had really pushed upon us as we grew up. And I thank him for that, alhamdulillah. But I remember being very confused, because as someone who grew up here and as someone who has always loved the law, I'm an attorney by profession, I very much in my younger days thought that the ideas embedded in the Constitution were something that were automatically implemented. I didn't know any better, right? Like many of us here, I grew up sort of in a bubble. And it's not until I started growing up and seeing so much injustice that I realized just how much our votes count, just how much we needed to be a part of civic engagement, because without it, and I'm saying this unequivocally, if you don't vote, there is no accountability to those that are serving in public office. And without accountability, your interests are not being served. So it's really, really important to understand that every policy that comes to be, if we want it to carry your interest, the people, public officials will go back to that voter registry and they will see who votes once, who votes repeatedly, and they will determine whom they're going to give their attention to. That's first and foremost. And yes, there have been many efforts towards registration. Certainly with CAIR New York, we have done it. We've gone to masajid. We take them in different languages, the registration. So in New York City, for example, you have multiple languages. And there's door-to-door knocking. Of course, with COVID, there has been some issues with being able to get out just as frequently, but alhamdulillah, there has been much of an effort, not just by CAIR New York, by others as well, who are really pushing for registration. And why are we doing this? It's because we understand that every vote counts. That's point number 2. And this has been alluded to, so I'm not gonna go into it too much, but especially in states like Florida, Virginia, Michigan, key swing states, those votes can come down to the nitty gritty, a 1 percentage point, a 2 percentage point. And that really emphasizes the fact that we can't be lazy and we can't say somebody else will take care of the responsibility for us. It's upon us to do so. And I also want to emphasize that even if you're not in the battleground states, it's extremely important for you to vote, including in local elections. Remember, many of the policies that you must adhere to on a day-to-day basis happens on the local level. And local level, whether it's something for the mayor, whether it's a county legislator, whether it's a board. So how many times have I been pulled into a situation in which there is a masjid construction project, a mosque construction project, in which Islamophobia comes into play and the community comes against it. And all of a sudden you're going to your local legislators, for example, and you're asking them what's going on and you want their support, but you don't have their ear. Why? Because you're not a voting block in your county or in your local area. So it's really important to get involved on the local level as well. And while obviously this next upcoming national election is extremely important as well, let's not also forget about local elections and their importance in your day-to-day actions in your particular area where you live. The next thing that I want to go to is the idea of making sure that your vote counts, right? And there's 2 parts to this. Number 1, understanding when and how you can vote. And then number 2, making sure that your vote was counted. And what do I mean by this? Again, pieces of this has already been given to our viewers. So there are 3 ways to vote this year. You know, New York is always seen as a progressive state, but in many ways, we have been lagging in voting rights. So for example, voting early is something that's very new to New Yorkers, whereas they've had it in other states for a very long time. That's the same thing with voting by mail as well. So there are 3 ways that I really want to emphasize. There's voting by mail, there's early voting, and then of course there's the day of on November 3rd. If you are going to vote by mail, then you'll have to have requested a ballot first, right? So you have to go to your local board of elections. There's a form for you to fill out. You make sure that it gets to them in time. Do not wait to the last moments, because if you do, by the time that ballot gets to you and then you want it processed and then you want to send in your actual ballot, it will be too late. So do not, wait for if you want to choose to vote by mail, which is a great option with the pandemic, but you have to do it ahead of time. The second part is voting early, and the dates have been mentioned, October 24th through November 1st in most areas. The thing I want to emphasize about that, and something that perhaps some don't know, is that the normal place where you go to vote may not be your early voting site. So there are a lot less early voting sites than there are on normal election day on November 3rd. So you want to check where you're supposed to go to vote early. Don't count on it being the same place that you would normally go on November 3rd. The third thing I want to bring to your attention, of course, is the day of. Now, do we anticipate long lines? Probably. You're going to stick it out. okay? You have to. The challenge, you know, the impact of this vote is just too great for us to say, you know what, lines are long, I'm not going to wait. Just think about this. The policies that come into play through this administration can haunt not just you for the next 4 years, but really decades long policies, right? We're still seeing policies such as the Patriot Act post 9/11 haunt us till this day. And the reason that the Patriot Act got passed sweepingly was because we had no political voice after 9/11, right? So we learned a really huge lesson, and we saw the impact of not having a political voice when literally people went to register because, you know, of the NSEERS program. I don't know how many people know about that. For a while, we had the national system of registration, entry and exit registration system that the government had put together. And it basically said that male Muslims from certain countries, from certain age, had to wait online and register with the government. And people were not coming home. Families who had sent their husbands, their brothers online to do the right thing and register per the law that came into play, had people not coming home because they were taken to detention without any kind of you know, legal representation. And so those kinds of policies still haunt us till today, and we have to learn those lessons and not repeat our mistakes. The second part of all this that I mentioned was making sure that your ballot counts. Is there such a thing as voter suppression? I think Dr. Bashir may know about this more than I, because the African-American community has been facing voter suppression tactics for a very, very long time, since the time they were given the vote, right? We're actually seeing this in the Muslim community as well. We actually have a matter right now in Lackawanna County, in Lackawanna and Erie County, actually, in which we saw in the June primary, there were a number of Muslim voters who had voted by absentee ballot, and those absentee ballots were delivered as they're permitted to be delivered. And 200 of them, over 200 absentee ballots got challenged. And when a FOIL response and a Freedom of Information and Law request was put to the Board of Elections, we learned that of those over 200 names, every single one of them had an overtly Muslim or Arab Middle Eastern name, right? Except for one. And that one person happened to be a known ally to the Muslim community. So it was really telling. And where does that case stand right now? We actually have been able to get the New York State Attorney General to initiate an investigation. And we also think that there may have been some criminal conduct in that challenge. And so there's also potentially criminal investigation as well. But I give this to you as an example as to what can happen, just to remind people that voter suppression is real. Do I say this now to frighten people and to say, no, I'm not going to vote? No, of course not. But if you have to, for example, if there's an irregularity at the poll when you go the day of, you want to make a note of it. You want to speak to a supervisor. You want to make sure that you have a phone number or an organization that you can call to say, hey, I'm at the voter registration, I'm at the voting site, and they're saying that, you know, for some reason I have to fill out an affidavit, right? You want to make sure that your vote counts, and you want to make sure that if there is an irregularity, that you make a note of it and you report it so that we can get to the bottom of it. Now, the fourth or fifth thing, I'm losing count, I think fourth, is this idea of not only making sure your vote counts this time, but I want every single one of you to make yourself, to make your parents, if you're younger, you know, to make your children, if you have children, you know, I want to see multi-generations going and voting together. And then I want you to repeat it for every single election. Why am I saying this? We have heard directly from the mouths of politicians say that, you know, it's great to have somebody vote once for one election, but they really pay attention to those that are repeat voters, right? It is very, very important to be a repeat voter, because then they know you take it very seriously and you're not voting just in the one big national election, but you're voting in the local elections as well, right? And then, of course, the last thing that I'm going to say, and then I'll go into just a couple of stats really quickly, is, you know, Dr. Bashir also mentioned this a little bit, and I'm going to get into it, and I'm going to be frank, and I hope I don't upset people, but I think it's my job to do so. I have seen more civic engagement from the Muslim community. We've even seen Muslim, especially of the younger folks, actually running for office themselves, which is fantastic. It's a pretty new phenomenon for us, really. And I'm really encouraged by it. But on the flip side of that, I also see that while we have been civically engaged to a higher degree, I often see that we invite public officials to our places of worship, to our centers, and it becomes nothing but a photo op. And quite honestly, I'm so over that, right? And I hope that you are too. So I have seen programs stop because you put somebody on the stage with 300, 400, 500 guests, and that program stops when the person is leaving the stage because there's a line for photographs. I want to make this very clear, and those that agree can agree, and those that don't agree don't have to agree. But public officials, to me, are not officials, they're servants. They're servants of the people. We are a democracy, which means what? We are a government for the people, by the people. It is not by the people if we only give them a platform and they speak to whomever they want, and then their name sticks in 400, 500 brains, but you have no idea what they voted for in the past 2-3 years. Where were their voice when the Muslim ban came out, for example? Where was their voice when funding to other countries was being pulled? Were your interests being served? Where are they on the BLM movement? Where are they on the matters that matter most to us? And so we really, really need to make sure that we are addressing our concerns, that any politician comes into our spaces, we should already know what their record is, and we should be prepared to ask them questions about their past. And if they're a candidate, we should be prepared to ask them, what kind of promises are you making to our community? We want to know, what are you going to do for us? Right? So those are the things that I really want to bring to everyone's attention. Very quickly, I'll just go over some of those issues that really matter to us. Some of them have already been brought up. Of course, Islamophobia. So there was a study done by CAIR as well as other coalition partners. And what we found, the #1 issue of those surveyed said civil rights was the #1 issue for Muslim Americans, right? And civil rights encompasses Islamophobia as well as the other civil rights abuses that we are seeing, and they're not necessarily distinct. Let me just make that clear. We understand now, in looking through history, that civil rights abuses towards one community is repeated constantly on other communities as well. There is a line that is really bringing us all together as we come to this understanding and see that the Muslim ban followed the Chinese Exclusion Act, for example. When they talked about registering and putting Muslims in camps, well, that's what they did to the Japanese internment, right? When we see civil rights abuses within the legal system, which we most certainly see, especially in terrorism-related cases, we see that in our African-American community, our Black brothers and sisters have been suffering the same exact thing for how long now, right? And let's not forget that the BLM movement is of course, something that is unique to the Black community. However, we have to make sure that we understand that there's a large part of the Muslim community which is Black, right? So those are quite literally our brothers and sisters in faith that are being persecuted on a daily basis, which makes it our issue. Any civil rights issue by default of our religion becomes our issue, because we are told that we cannot stand in the face of injustice without saying something, doing something, and being a part of a change. That is something that is incumbent upon us in our faith. The second, I just want to also go over the other issues. I emphasize that one, obviously, because I am with CAIR New York. We're a civil rights organization, and I'm glad to see that that was the #1 issue from our community. Interestingly enough, the top 5 issues were civil rights, then healthcare, then education. 4th was climate change, and then 5th was immigration. Okay, so those were the 5 issues according to the survey. And the other statistic that I will share with all of you is that in terms when Muslim Americans who were registered to vote were asked, what are the policy changes that you want to see? The top 4 were international, and this is like broader policies, international humanitarian causes, right? So I think that goes back to the funding, for example, that my brother Khusru was talking about. And then religious discrimination. #3 was Medicare, and #4 was gun control. That one I didn't anticipate, but it was. So those are the 4 top policy issues. And again, I don't want to take up too much of the time. I know that we have a question and answer session, which I'll most certainly be staying for, but I want to emphasize to everyone that multi-generations, I want to see all of you taking, even your younger children who can't vote. I take my children with me because I want to see them understand that that I'm just number one as Americans, everyone else, and my rights exist just like everybody else's rights. Number two, I want it to be a part of their norm as they're growing up, right? I want them to see that it's not difficult, that it's not something that they should feel alienated from, but rather they need to participate, right? And number three, I want to really give them that impression that this is a civic duty that we cannot ignore, right? So I take my children with me every single time, and I hope that you do too. And, again, I thank Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia, not just for this effort. I know you guys are there for so many of the efforts against Islamophobia, and I look forward to the question and answer sessions. And I thank everyone who not only is participating through your viewership, but also those that are speaking and educating all of us, including myself. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Afaf, that was excellent. Saw a lot of people nodding their head as you were speaking, and especially Dr. Bashir. It's like he's, yeah, there he is. He's got the thumbs up many, many times, and Priscilla and many, many others. That was very, very helpful. I think we all feel the same. One of the points that you made was not to treat these elected officials. And the reason why I'm making this point is because we do have some videos coming up with some elected officials. And I want to emphasize that they're not the Beatles or anything like that. We're not here for an autograph or anything, or to put them on a pedestal. It is for us to really understand who these elected officials are that are supposed to serve us. They need to earn our vote. They need to be able to be accountable to the Muslim community. It cannot be everything else and Muslim community second. So that is why we are playing these videos, and we're going to play them shortly. But it's to educate everyone here, to get you to understand who they are. So when we play the videos, you'll see the name of the person and you'll see their title as well. But it's for you to understand who they are, for you to connect, for you to reach out, and for you to, most importantly, hold them accountable for the issues and things that are important to you, to us as a community. It's very, very important that we make that distinction. We're not there to really give them the pedestal. It's to educate us. So before we go into some of those videos, and my friend Saad Siddiqui will be introducing those in a second, we do want to do some Q&A with Sister Afaf after hearing that amazing speech and some of those informations that she gave us. So if you do have a question, then please raise your hand, or you can raise your hand digitally on the screen, or type it into the chat box. I have a few moderators who are volunteering, who are going to look at raised hands, and they'll call your name so that you can ask your question. When you do ask your question, please do remember to take yourself off mute. So hover your mouse over the box that you can see and just say unmute or ask to unmute, and you'll be able to speak. So let's see if we have a few questions. I'm gonna look at the, and I'm going to ask my moderators to help me out on this one.
At this point, I don't see questions.
Yeah, if you could raise your hand for questions, and don't be shy. Oh. And one of the things that we want is, this is a Zoom meeting. This is the new normal, I've been told. So we do want to see your lovely faces as well. So do turn it around. This is a community event.
Afia has a question.
If you do have a video, please turn your video on so we can see you raise your hand and we can interact with each other. So please don't be shy. Turn your videos on so we can see who's here and ask some questions, and we can have a conversation.
Okay, we have Safia Sultana has a question.
Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So my question was, I was hearing the sister talk about voter suppression and how she mentioned that that's real. How do we make sure that our absentee ballots that we're sending back in are actually accounted for, or, you know, how do we know that it's gone where it should have gone?
Okay, I just had to unmute myself. Fantastic question. All right, so number one is to be aware. So I don't know if some of you heard in the news, but I know in California, for example, there were some boxes that were being put, like, in other words, they were marked boxes to accept your vote, your mail-in ballot, and they were not from the federal government. They were not your USPS boxes, designated boxes, but actually one of the political parties was putting up these look-alike boxes, which they thought was, well, they claim was perfectly legal, although there was a court actually, there's a little bit of a court tussle there, and they didn't allow them to do it. They said they need to take them down. Why do I mention this? Because people can be very clever in what they do. And they had specifically placed the boxes in areas where they thought they would gain the most votes for their particular party. So that raises concerns. And with the voter suppression in Lackawanna, that also raises concerns with regards to the mail-in ballots. And I want to sort of emphasize in that one is those were actually brought to the Board of Election by hand. They were delivered, so it wasn't even mail-in delivery. But if you plan on voting by mail, and it is something that many states have used for a long time. Number one, you want to make sure that it's a regular USPS box that actually is supposed to take this mail, right? Because like I said, there have been a couple of lookalikes, in particular in California. They've been ordered not to take actually the boxes down, but nonetheless, you want to make sure that it's a USPS box. Secondly, you want to make sure that you're abiding by the date deadlines. And number one thing that we see that actually where you can validly have your vote discounted is that you follow the instructions. So when you get a mail by vote ballot, it's one envelope and then there's another envelope inside it, right? It's a security envelope. And that's the inside envelope is the one that you're supposed to use. And you have to sign that envelope because they're going to need that signature to match it to the one that they have on record for you. So make sure that you're following the instructions. If you do not follow those instructions, if you do not send it in the right envelope, in that secondary smaller envelope inside of the bigger one, for example, if you do not sign the outside, if there's missing information, then essentially your vote is and can be challenged or discounted. So you want to make sure that you follow those guidelines very carefully. And then thereafter, should you feel confident if you do follow all the rules and you follow the deadlines, should you feel confident? Yes. I don't want to discourage people from not taking into that option. We have many people who really could benefit by voting by mail. And like I said, it is a regular practice in many states. It's newer to New York, but that doesn't mean we should shy away from that option. My personal preference, and I'll say this not to necessarily, tell all of you what to do, but my personal preference, if I did give one piece of advice, if someone did straight up ask me, I would say, go vote early. It's better than, taking a chance that you accidentally do something wrong with regards to your mail-in ballot. And at the same time, you're afforded a week to try to stay away from the November 3rd lines. So if you're concerned about your health, that may also help in some regard. Now, if you're someone who just can't get out of the house or because of COVID, you've got underlying health problems, certainly take advantage of the vote by mail. Just be careful that you do things as the instructions lay out for you. And then, if you feel as if for some reason that I don't know how you would know, but if you felt like for some reason you got some sort of inkling that your vote, your family's votes, your friends' votes who voted by mail were not counted, then you can always do a FOIL request, just like what we had done in this particular situation, and you can request to see which votes were challenged, right? Now, hopefully, again, that doesn't happen, but there's no reason for you to think that that would happen if you followed all the instructions.
Jazakallah. Thank you, sister.
Of course.
We have a second question. This one comes from Sister Sayyidah Kamal, who asks, there's this thought amongst some Muslim voters that their vote does not make a difference. How would you address them that their vote would in fact make a difference?
I'll tell you it makes a difference with certainty because I see the impact every single day in the line of work that we have. I'll give you a quick example. I already gave one example with regards to masjid construction opposition. We had a situation like that actually, And it became very, very political and rather nasty, because you had certain community members who had the ear of those that had the power in that county to make the decision as to whether or not those permits would go through. We see those kind of issues come up all the time. I want to also just remind people that there are multiple issues that we as Muslims face very, very directly. We have flying while Muslim, a phenomenon, you know, that we understand that when you're on an airplane and you want to say a supplication and it's in Arabic, somebody's going to get nervous and you may just get ejected off of a plane, right? We have situations in which there's banking while Muslim. We have 2, maybe 3 lawsuits right now against financial institutions, Venmo and Citibank, right? Because the policies with banking regulations tend to have a disparate negative impact on Muslims. So for example, with the Venmo situation, you try to pay your bill to a friend. So let's say you go to the restaurant and the restaurant is called Al-Aqsa restaurant. Everybody knows the reference to Al-Aqsa. It's the masjid, it's the mosque, the second holiest site in the Muslim faith that is in Palestine. So you go and you want to pay your friend for your portion of the bill. You know what happens? Your transaction gets bounced back and they get you on the phone, right? Because they want to know what is going on and what is this about Al-Aqsa. This actually happened and we're suing for that, right? That would never happen if it was another restaurant without that name. Why am I trying to merge these 2 topics together? Because when we go to Congress, which we often do as an organization. So every year, unfortunately last year it got canceled because of the pandemic, but we have what's called Muslim Advocacy Day, in which all of you are invited and we go by bus and we go either upstate to Albany or we go to Congress in Washington, DC. And what do we do in those circumstances? We pick out certain things we want to talk about and we meet with various legislators and we tell them, look, these are the things that are impacting Muslims. Now, do you think when I walk out of that room that they're not going to say, how many votes did we get from that area? Is this a priority for us? Do we want to put the legislation together? Is this one of the issues that we want to make as our legislative priority, which we're going to fight on behalf of this community? There is no politician that I have ever known that is going to fight on your behalf unless the relationship is reciprocal. In other words, are you voting? And if you are not voting, now remember, politicians don't know whom you voted for, secret ballot, right? But they do know whether or not you did vote, right? That's not secret. And when they understand that, when they know that you're active, they are going to choose what legislative policies they are going to make their priorities. Whether or not they fight for you will depend on how active you are in civic engagement. So for those that say, my vote doesn't count, I would say, your vote has very much impacted me. It has impacted you, whether or not you know it. It has impacted your children's trajectory in this country. And when you rely on other people to take the responsibility, the message that you sent to the community, to your own children, is that I don't need to be active because somebody else will handle it for me. And that's just, you know, a very, if you'll excuse me, you know, just a very nonsensical rationale for you to adhere to. So I really urge everyone to understand that every vote does in fact count, that your vote may be the deciding vote with a small number of individuals who can turn certainly local politicians around. We have certain areas, certain counties in which the difference between putting somebody with your values, seeing somebody, for example, who believes in civil rights, will come down to just a few votes, right? We see that, especially on the local level. You can choose, rather than waiting for other politicians to do for you, you can choose somebody from within the community that you know holds your values and actually put them into the seat that you need them to be in through local politics and see policies change seemingly within such a short time. A couple of months, you can see local politicians change. If you're willing to aggregate your pool of voting and you're willing to support those who support your policies and interests. That is why your vote counts. Please, you know, get the message out, make sure that you do it, and make sure that everybody else who's registered does it. And if you're not registered, don't wait until the next 4 years to get registered. Please register today so that you are able to vote in local elections that will soon come in just a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a lot of questions queued up, but we wanted to make sure that we play some of the videos that we have. Sister Afaf, if you could stick around for a little bit, we're going to play a few videos, hear from these elected officials, as I mentioned before, and then we're going to come back to some Q&A. We have a lot of questions queued up, and we have a few other people who are going to be speaking as well. So if I can ask Osama, could you play the first batch of videos for us so that we could hear from some of our elected officials on the importance of the Muslim vote?
Janish, I think let's take a couple of more questions and then we can get Osama to play the video.
Osama, if you're not ready, we'll take one more video. So just get ready for the videos to be played. In the meantime, we'll take another question. I believe Umema Ansari has a question. Umema.
Before that, Janish, Muhammad Imaduddin wanted to ask a question, just continuing in series.
Go ahead, Muhammad Imaduddin. Why don't you go ahead with your question?
Hey, assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
So I have like a two-part question. My first part is, previously a lot of politicians, the sister specifically said, choose the right politician, right? And previously a lot of politicians, they said a lot of things, but they didn't fulfill them. So how do we know who to choose in the right politician? That's my first part. And my second part is, when will we see a change within our schools, specifically for Muslims, such as halal food, religious holidays, whatsoever? Because, we can vote all we want, but we want to see a change equally within our community for us Muslims. How do we know that's specifically going to happen? Because we've been here for 60, 70 years and we really haven't seen any change. How do we know we will see change? That's my question. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Great questions.
So two answers to each of your questions. Number one, okay, so how do you know whom to vote for? All right, number one thing you need to do is, if they are not a new politician, you want to go back to their record. It's very easy to say what people want to hear. It's something else to actually check their record and see whether or not their words match with their votes, right? And these records are made public, right? You can go into a website, whether it's, you're a state elected official, a federal official, a local official, and you can see what are the policies that they brought to the floor. In other words, did they write any legislative policies? Did they co-sponsor any legislative policies? And what did they vote on for other policies? And there are resources out there to help you make the kinds of decisions. So I know, for example, many organizations, so CAIR and CAIR New York in particular, we're a C3. What that means is that we can't endorse any particular candidate. So I can't tell you today, vote one way or another. This politician's terrific. This politician is not terrific. We can absolutely dice and challenge administrations for unjust policies, and we do that all the time, but we can't tell you who to vote for or support any one party. However, C4s are institutions and organizations which do endorse them, and we do have a number of Muslim ones. As a matter of fact, also, there are some organizations which are C3s and C4s, and even the ones that are only C3s, meaning they don't necessarily endorse a candidate, they do keep track of legislative votes. So I'll give you an example. CAIR actually has what they call the political scorecard, and I'll certainly send that over to my friends at WCAI so you guys can hopefully, pass that along to all your members. And what it has is it really looks at a number of different policies that directly impact the Muslim community that came to the floor, and then it records how each person voted on it. So you can go down that line on that scorecard and say, okay, my local elected official voted yes on this, no on this, no on this, and yes on this. Well, why did they vote yes or no on this? This is something that matters to me, right? So there are resources out there that you can take a look at as the Muslim community as a whole gets more sophisticated in tracking this. The second thing that I would say in terms of when will you see change? You'll see change when you force change. Change is not going to come by itself, frankly speaking. If you're waiting for change to come without you opening your voice and making a lot of noise about it, it's not going to happen. We do have halal food now in public schools in New York City to a small extent. We have a pilot program now. It's in more than a dozen schools right now, so we see halal food. Eid holidays in New York City public school came after years and years of battling with politicians. It took essentially a huge push as the candidate was coming into power. In other words, you have to make meetings with candidates and say, these are our priorities. And if you get voted, will you make it happen? Right? That is really important, because if you're not voicing what you want to those folks, if you're not making appointments with them, if you, my brother, are not going with 5, 10, 20 other people within the community and saying, we're here to see Representative so-and-so because we'd like to discuss a number of issues that are impacting us every single day, and we'd like to know what he or she can do about them. If they are not hearing that from you, and if you're not willing to take it to the next level and to say, look, this is important to us, and if we don't see a change in it, then we will remember that the next election cycle as it comes around, then you will not see the change. The change is brought not because of fancy wishfulness. The change can only be brought when you bring it forth to the edge and you push it through yourself with your own voice and your own vote. So it does take some time and effort, sure. It takes some organizing, sure. But I have to, ask, how bad do you want the change? If you want it bad enough, then you should be willing to put in the effort to meet up with those legislators and to demand the change.
Alhamdulillah.
Can I, Janesh, can I add to that a little bit? This is Khusro.
Go ahead, Khusro.
I think we have some examples before us of other minorities who have organized themselves and who are doing a fantastic job of getting their point of view across. And we know them, and amongst them is the Jewish community, and I'm a big admirer of how well they are organized. And their numbers are somewhat similar to ours, but they have been at it for a long time, and it does take a long time, but they are really, really well organized, and we have a lot to learn from them. And I would say, therefore, that it is a method which has been tried, and it has been tried very successfully. All we have to do is to see how they do it, and they are doing all the things that Sister Afaf has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Khusro. We're running a tiny bit behind schedule, but we are going to play a few videos. So I'm going to hand over to my friend Saad to introduce the first batch of videos for us to listen to, so that there is some important messaging here going on. I want you to all listen carefully, familiarize yourself with our elected officials, and then we're going to come back to do some Q&A, and we'll repeat the cycle again. So Saad, why don't you introduce our first batch of videos?
Just very briefly before I do, Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I just wanted to add a couple of points, which is actually very critical just to kind of flesh this out. One of the brothers asked the extent to which our votes make a difference. I'll just turn to the 2000 election. And one thing to bear in mind is that Al Gore lost that election by less than 1,000 votes. In Dade County, Florida, it was actually less than 700 votes. I think it was about 660 votes. There were over 15,000 registered Muslim voters in the state of Florida. Actually, in Miami-Dade County alone, there were 15,000 registered voters. There were actually closer to 30,000 registered Muslim voters in the state of Florida in 2000. Understand, we have the power to shape national elections. And looking at it with respect to local elections here in Westchester County, prior to 2017, and I give him credit for this, our county executive had never set foot in a mosque, ever, prior to 2017. And it was because many of us in the community advocated and pushed for him to acknowledge the community, that he has not only set foot in a mosque, but he's actually started to acknowledge the community and make greater inroads. But that's important. That's how you get change. and it's about holding them accountable. Accountability does not come in one election cycle. It is multiple election cycles, because it's very simple. We get them elected, and if they don't hold their promises, we get them replaced. Exactly. Just as easily as we get them elected, they can lose that office. Easy come, easy go. There's an expression that I've heard many times in my life. The squeaky wheel gets oiled. You never let them forget. Mm-hmm. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to introduce videos from 3 elected officials, actually 2 elected and 1, I suspect, soon to be elected official. Andrea Stewart-Cousins is the Senate Majority Leader of New York State. Prior to being the state senator and the current Senate Majority Leader, she was also a member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. She has been a long-standing public servant. And additionally, we have actually Jamal Bowman, who is the candidate for Congress for Congressional District 16, which encompasses both Yonkers and the Bronx. And lastly, we have Mimi Rocha, who is the candidate for District Attorney of Westchester County. So with that, Brother Osama, let's get to their messages.
We can't hear it, Osama.
We can't hear it, brother.
On the important Salam, I'm Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. And I'm honored to address the Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia on the importance of voting this year. And I want to thank your president, Chuck Chesnavage, for this opportunity. We're just weeks away from the most important election of our lifetime. The very soul of our nation and the values we hold dear are at stake. We know that an attack on the Muslim community is an attack on all of us. Hatred has no place in New York State. This is why we passed landmark legislation to prohibit discrimination of religious attire in the workplace and strengthen our hate crime laws and the training law enforcement receives to enforce them. But we must do more. There are nearly 3.5 million Muslim Americans in the United States, including here in New York and in key swing states throughout the nation. And I'm told that unfortunately, the Muslim community lags behind some other faith communities, with only 78% being registered to vote. We could all do better. Campaigns like the My Muslim Vote Initiative are helping to mobilize Muslim Americans across the Americas so their voices will be heard on Election Day. So whether through early voting, voting on Election Day, or mailing in your ballots, this is the time to make our voices heard, because together we can change the trajectory of our nation. Let's get motivated. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum to my Muslim friends and family, brothers and sisters. My name is Jamal Bowman. I'm the Democratic nominee for the 16th District of New York. We cover the North Bronx and Southern Westchester County, which includes Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and New Rochelle. I'm sending you this message because we absolutely, positively need you to vote on November 3rd or before November 3rd. Please organize in your community. Make sure everyone votes on or before November 3rd so that we can always center human rights, peace and love for all people across the country, and fight against, Islamophobia, racism, sexism, classism, xenophobia, and everything that keeps us oppressed. Peace and love, everyone. It's a pleasure to connect with you, and I look forward to meeting you all in person.
Hello to my Muslim American friends in Westchester County. I am Mimi Rocha, your Democratic nominee for Westchester District Attorney. I'm on the ballot on November 3rd. This is the most important election of our lifetime. Your vote is your voice. So let's make sure it counts. We have 3 ways to vote here in Westchester. Early voting in person starting October 24th through November 1st. Mail-in voting with an absentee ballot, which you can apply for right now. And in-person voting on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd. Please make a plan to vote. I look forward to serving as your district attorney in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Osama. So we're going to return now to some of the questions. So you've seen 3 elected officials, a couple of them candidates, 1 incumbent. We're really trying to create the awareness so that we familiarize ourselves with these elected officials, these politicians. So with that in mind, we might have some more questions now geared towards these elected officials, and you might sort of scratch your head with a few more that may have come to you. So I'm going to continue the questions. I believe next on the list we had Umema Ansari with the next question. My moderators can keep me honest if she was the next one, but I think she was up next. Okay, I can see.
Close enough.
All right, so Umema, go ahead with your question.
Hello, Assalamu
Walaikum salam, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. But there's some background noise, Umema, so if you could, maybe there's another person with a phone on.
Okay, so Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I know Sister Afaf has answered most of my question, but I was speaking on behalf of those who have been away from the political sphere for a bit, so they don't know exactly like who the politicians are and who's running and what their campaigns are. And since the time is short, I was wondering if there's any resources that can help us kind of consolidate the information so we're prepared for the elections on knowing who's supporting what for their campaign and things that we'd have to keep in mind.
League of Women Voters.
Yeah, so there are some really, can everybody hear me? Because I switched over to earphones. Okay, so there are some resources out there, Sister Umema. So thank you for asking that question. It's important to vote, but it's also important to be an informed voter. Sister Priscilla actually just said the League of Women Voters. There are organizations that are both Muslim and those that are not Muslim that keep record cards. And actually, there are plenty of websites that you can go to, whether they're public websites, meaning that of your county or that of the state, and it lists people who are going to be on the ballot. And oftentimes you'll also see some of the issues that they're focused upon, but you need to do that initial research, or you need to find an organization that already does it for you. And what I promise to all of you is that I will go ahead. I know I was in contact with Dr. Bashir before. I have, Dr. Chesvanaj's email as well. I'll go ahead and email some of those links to all of you. Common Cause, there are many, many fantastic organizations that do a lot of research on behalf of those that need it. Now, whether or not every single elected person, meaning even in your local area, will be on those, possibly not. Having said that, your local public offices often do have some basic information on who's going to be on the ballot come November 3rd, and then you can go from there. So we'll go ahead and send those links out.
Just one thing I would add, independent of that, it's also worth just looking at their own individual campaign websites, because they will actually indicate what their position is on particular issues, especially when it comes to the local elections. Just one thing to bear in mind.
So once you've identified who's running, because a lot of people don't even know oftentimes who the candidates are. It's happened to all of us. We go to, put in a vote for next president, and we see that there's so many other offices that we didn't even anticipate to be there. There are offices like district attorneys, for example. Did you take that into consideration? So, make sure that you know who all the candidates are going to be on that ballot for November 3rd. And then absolutely, like Brother Sat said, you can even then look them up individually.
Very good. Thank you, Sister. And thanks, Umema, for the question. We had in the chat another question. If my moderators can help me out, I believe Afsar question specifically for the WCAI. I think we answered it in the chat, but I think it's important to address it here. Brother Afsar, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
His question is regarding endorsement, that if we are endorsing anyone.
Yeah. I wanted to see if he could, I don't think he's unmuted. Brother Afsar, are you there? Otherwise, I'll repeat your question, or Brother Shahriar will repeat.
He also has a follow-up asking, how would they know if you're a Muslim when you go to vote? And I think this was in relation to the vote tampering that Sister Afaf was talking about earlier, but I think it's worth addressing either way.
Yeah, there's two questions I think he asked. The first one was, are we endorsing any particular candidate as WCAI? And the second one was, how do they recognize whether you are a Muslim who is voting? How's that recognition? So Chuck, why don't you take the first question with regards to endorsement, and then Sister Afaf, if you could answer the second. So Chuck, if you go with the first one.
Yes, thank you. It's already been stated, and I'll just simply repeat it, as a organization that is actually attempting to have 501c3 status. You cannot be partisan politically in supporting or endorsing any candidates. You have to take a neutral stance and basically follow some of the suggestions already made in terms of your own exploration of any candidates. Because you can have your 501c3 status removed or suspended if you in fact appear to be too partisan. That's just the way those organizations and guidelines work. So now I pass it over to the next person to speak.
And it's really important to understand what my brother, Dr. Chesnavach, just said, because a lot of our masajid are also C3s. And if you do decide to get engaged, you can do some things. I'll just, very quickly, you can have, for example, a candidate forum, but then you have to invite all the candidates, for example. You cannot give a platform just for one side, for example. So there are ways to be active, but you need to make sure that you understand the rules that encompass C3s. So in terms of the second question, how do they know that you're Muslim? So there is no box that lays out your faith or your religion when you're voting. However, what we saw in that, for example, the list that we saw in Erie County is you had overtly sounding Muslim names. So look at the screen right in front of you. You can clearly tell who is of Arab or South Asian origin, for example, and that's nothing to hide away from. Having said that, my name would probably, well, I have Nasher. Maybe that's a little bit, mixed. Maybe not everybody would know, but you see like the Faroukis, the Ansaris, the Muhammads, the Sayyidas, the Ahmeds, all of these names would be the ones that would probably be chosen out, whereas the Priscillas and the Chucks, probably not so much. Now, does that necessarily mean that it's accurate? No, we know that a person can have an Arab or Middle Eastern or Muslim sounding name and not be Muslim. And we know the other side. We know that there are plenty of people without a tradition, what we would think of as a traditional Muslim name, and they would actually be brothers and sisters in faith. So is it 100% accurate? No, but that's not the point. The point is that there is an intent to discriminate, whether it actually ends up being true. So I'll give you an example. If my name happens to be Ahmed Farouki, for example, but I'm actually not Muslim, I just originate from a land in which Ahmed is a popular name, for example, did they intend to discriminate against a Muslim? Yes, or perhaps somebody of that national origin, because the intent is there. Whether or not that discrimination was actually implemented in the way that they thought is of no consequence in the matter of the law when it comes to hate crimes or discrimination. So long as the intent was there to discriminate against a particular group of people, then that of course is illegal, and that's something we would combat. But that's really how they identify. It's really through your name.
And I would also add that you can lobby and protest for particular bills or issues that are out there. So we're not completely silenced in terms of positions we can take.
Yeah, issues is one thing, candidates endorsing is another.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to another segment before we go to the next Q&A. So we're going to, Chuck, are you ready with your first poll? So we wanted to sort of make this a little bit interactive for everyone. And we're going to do a couple of polls. And the first one should be up on your screen. We'll be sharing the results afterwards. So if you could take 10 seconds to vote. And this is practice for voting. So just take your time and vote.
And I just ask, we choose all, if they're all important, or just a few, so that people know it's not your most important, but all of those that are important?
I have the most important. I have the most important issue.
Because you had the word issues, so that's what confused me. Okay. Thank you. I thought I wouldn't be the only one confused.
All right, so we'll give it another 15 seconds. So just click on the issue that is most important to you during this upcoming election. And then we'll share the results. You can probably see the results on the screen when it comes up. So
we have 42% who voted.
So we're a minute in. Anyone else wants to vote? Otherwise, we're going to close the poll in 10 seconds.
Okay, we're up to 50% voted. 53.
These are all the November 3rds that are coming in right now. So, all right. So let's.
So we just ended the polling, and we see that social inequality is at 87%, and the other ones are.
Oh, there's another vote happening. Chuck, did you start that one or?
No, I didn't start that one, but let me just see if I could get out of this a second. It looks like they may be running parallel to each other, but let me just see a second. I'm sorry. I'll go back to the first one. This is the important issues one. So we can see that social inequality was #1 at this presentation. Public health was second at 53%. Education and economy were equal at 40. Climate change was 47. So it was social inequality, public health, climate change, and then education and economy tied. All right, is that good? Do you want to go to a—
Very interesting. Thank you, Chuck. I think Dr. Bashir, you have a quick question before we go to the next videos.
Okay.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Dr. Bashir, you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. I just want to digress to the question one of the participants answered, how do they know you're Muslim? I recognize what Sister Afaf had stated, but also connected to that is that any kind of population estimate in terms of how many Muslims are in America or not, so forth and so on. Most of those are incorrect because they're rejecting the null hypothesis, because many African Americans who are Muslims, practicing Muslims, do not have Arabic names.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an error in terms of estimating how many African Americans are Muslims. And this has to do with historical events that happened in the early 17 to 1800s when Muslims were lynched or hanged. So many of them anglicized their names so that they wouldn't be the victims of lynching. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bashir. Okay, I'm going to see if we can play the next batch of videos, and then we're going to have our next guest, Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard from Mount Vernon, who's going to be speaking to us. So Chuck, is Mayor Patterson-Howard with us?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so prompt me when she does join. But
Yes.
Let's play the next batch of videos if we can. Osama, are you ready to go?
All set, yep.
All right, let's play the next batch, please. Thank you.
Hold on, just very quickly in terms of who they are.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Saad. My bad. Introduce the elected officials who are going to be speaking shortly for us. Thank you.
So we have Michael Cater is the president of the Yonkers City Council. Christopher Johnson is also a Westchester County legislator for the 16th district, which includes Yonkers. He was also on the Yonkers City Council. Shelley Mayer, state senator for the 37th New York State Senate district, and Peter Harcum, who is the state senator for the 40th State Senate district in New York State.
Thank you very much, Saad. Sama, if you play them out.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I wanted to send you a quick note to remind everyone to make sure that they vote. Make sure that their friends and family vote. I don't care who you vote for. It's about exercising a fundamental American right. Many of us have family members that came to this country because of the American rights to vote. It's important this year more than ever that we go out and vote. There really is no reason not to vote between mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, early voting, and of course on Election Day. I don't care who you vote for or what party you're registered with. The most important thing is that you exercise your right to vote. People are literally dying all across the world to have this privilege. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Westchester County Legislator Christopher Johnson. Assalamu alaikum to you, my Muslim brother. As Election Day approaches, I don't have to tell you how important it is to cast your vote and have your voice heard. And because you know how important this election is, I want you to know that it's just as important for you to make a plan to vote. In New York State, there are several ways for you to cast your vote. You can request an absentee ballot from the Board of Elections if you cannot or do not feel like you can make it to the polls. You can cast your ballot early and in person at any of the 17 early voting sites throughout Westchester, starting on Saturday, October 24th. Or you can go out on Election Day and cast your vote then. Either way you choose, make a plan. Pick a date and time and make sure you know where to go. You can find that information on the Board of Elections website. Your vote counts. Make sure you use it.
Hi, this is State Senator Shelley Mayer, speaking to you from my home. My Muslim brothers and sisters, it's so good to see you. I wish I could be with you. I am speaking to you about the importance of voting this year and hoping you will make a plan to vote, either by early voting starting on Saturday, October 24th. The locations and the times are on the County Board of Elections website. Or you can apply for an absentee ballot by going to the Board of Elections website as well. And you can either drop that at one of the early voting sites, you can place it in the mail, or you can drop it off at the Board of Elections office in White Plains. Finally, you can vote in person on Tuesday, November 3rd from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. The lines may be long, but it is well worth the wait. However you choose to do it, make sure that you and your family and your friends cast your ballots this year, and let's make sure your voice is heard. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is New York State Senator Pete Harcum, sending greetings to all my friends in the Muslim community. You know, this election, there is so much at stake, and not only at the national level, at the state level and the local level. So it's so important that everybody votes so everybody's voice can be heard. So we're suggesting that everybody make a plan to vote. The easiest way, and what I'm encouraging people to do, is to do early voting that starts Saturday, October 24th. To find locations, see the link below. What's great about early voting is because it's spread out, you'll be able to be socially distant and find a time that's convenient for you. If you don't feel comfortable voting in person, there's certainly absentee ballot. So time is getting close, but you can go to the Board of Elections and request an absentee ballot. And finally, there's always Election Day. It may be crowded, but certainly it's worth the wait. We need to make sure that every voice is heard, every vote is counted. So please, I encourage you to make a plan and go vote. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
That's great. Thank you very much for playing those, Osama. So we do have our second live speaker, our second guest here with us today. Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard is the mayor of Mount Vernon. And Chuck, why don't you introduce Mayor Patterson-Howard and speak about some of the things that we've been working with the mayor on. I know there were some incidents that the mayor dealt with. So if you could introduce the mayor, and then Mayor, if you could speak a little bit about the importance of the Muslim vote, we'd appreciate it. But welcome to our event today.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd be happy to have you speak first, since I know you're prepared to speak. I did make reference in my introductory remarks, just briefly, that we were aware of an Islamophobic incident at the Mount Vernon Fire Department. And just to let you know, it is something we would like to explore at greater length at a future type of presentation. So we do not have to, take up a lot of time on this, but I did give that as an example. And if you wanted to address that, that is fine. I have the post that was put up if we do need to look at it, but I would like to just give you an opportunity to make your opening remarks first and let you know that was a little of the background so far.
No problem. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you today. I bring you greetings on behalf of the city of Mount Vernon. You know, clearly I am someone who understands the importance and the strength of the Islamic community. We here in Mount Vernon, regardless of an incident that we might have had by someone who is not as enlightened and who was quite ignorant and stuck in his own ways, we are a very welcoming and inclusive community. We have a very strong and engaged and involved Islamic community here in Mount Vernon. So they are woven and interwoven within the fabric of our community. What is quite interesting is the incident that you spoke about, which occurred in the fire department, was by a much older gentleman who was, you know, kind of at the end of his career. And it was after being disciplined by the highest ranking person in our department, which is our fire chief of operations, who is a Muslim. He is a Sunni Muslim. He is very proud of his faith and he lives his faith out loud in work and in the community. And so this was a direct hit at him in, you know, really retaliation from being disciplined from not doing his job. The other two highest ranking members, well, the three highest ranking members, 3 of the 7 highest ranking members in the Mount Vernon Fire Department are Islamic Americans. Our Chief Robert K. Odendo, our Chief Stevenson, and our, oh my God, why am I forgetting? I always call him by his nickname now. I can't even remember his real name right now. Our Chief Salahuddin. So it's, you know, we here in Mount Vernon, the issue was addressed. The individual is no longer with our fire department. Sometimes we just know it's time for people to move on, and I'll leave it at that. But it was definitely addressed. We spoke about it publicly. We spoke about it within our department. We are continuing to do inclusion, diversity training here in the city of Mount Vernon. Plus we're dealing with implicit bias. That's very important, but I'm just not one as an African-American who has experienced racism, who has experienced sexism, who is just, we can call it whatever we want to call it. Sometimes it's just ignorance. It's not always just fear. Sometimes it's just ignorance. And so I never have a problem calling it what it is. We definitely have no place here for it. So, you know, we work with the masjid here in Mount Vernon. We work with the Westchester Islamic Center. And we are more than happy to work with you more and more as we continue to educate, to encourage, to enlighten, and to empower all members of our community. The stronger we are, the more we're interwoven together, the stronger the quilt that makes up our community is. So we look forward to continued work. And please, like all of the people said in the videos, vote as if our country depended on it, because it does. No, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but we know that there are some who look to unify. We know that there are some whose power, whose strength, and only relevancy is continuing to drive division in our country, locally, on the statewide, and then on the national level. And so we have to vote for the heart and soul of America. We have to vote for the freedoms of America. We have to vote for the liberties of this country. This is why so many of us have come. This is why so many of us have stayed, and we cannot jeopardize that. And if you're not a citizen and you do not have the right to vote, then please make sure you're taking someone out to the polls and you're staying at the polling places locally and calling your friends around the country, because there is a lot of disenfranchisement. Will be a lot of intimidation at polling places. And so we're asking, especially for our brothers, for our strong men, to stand up and to stand forward and to stand out, even at the polling places on election day, to make sure that those who are able to vote are not intimidated and pushed away from the polls. We can stand in peace and we can stand powerfully in prayer. We know how to do this and move forward. God bless you.
Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard, thank you so much for being here live with us, for giving us your time. We are obviously a resource for you, along with the American Muslim Women's Association, that would be more than happy to speak with anybody. We have Sister Ola Nasher, who's also with Our Common Beliefs, another resource. So there's a number of resources very locally in the community. We're very happy also to get the update from you regarding the what happened with that particular fire department person. And it's something we'll just continue to monitor in terms of Westchester County policies regarding social media. We feel that's an important thing to monitor, and just to make sure that whatever those policies are, that they're not violated by discrimination or racism or any kind of comments that hurt the larger community belonging to Westchester County. Janesh, would you want me to try to show an example of that posting, or do you want to just keep moving on?
I think if you can show it very, very briefly, I think we could do that.
Okay, it's just
a few videos lined up and a few more Q&A. So
it's just an example. Can you let me know if you can see that?
We can see your screen.
Yes. So basically, this was a posting from an Islamophobic person in Europe. The fire department person just passed it on, as often happens. It's a classic Islamophobic trope. Bear in mind, I'll read it. Bear in mind that Islam is not a religion. It is a socio-political cult using religious trappings towards its goal of dominating the West. Because it is not a religion, but is instead a threat to our way of life, it is not an affront to the concept of, quote, freedom of religion, end quote, to put this cult in its place out of America. Muslims should be banned from all public offices and positions of authority and prohibited from building mosques or proselytizing.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, we're going to go into some Q&A. We still have Sister Afaf with us, and we have Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard with us as well. So we'll continue with the Q&A. I think we have a couple of other questions lined up. So if I can ask my moderators just to keep me honest here, who's next with their question?
I think we have most of the questions answered at this point.
Okay, I think I have a couple of people who've messaged me privately.
Okay.
Sure if he is still here. Mohammed Fahim, are you still on the call? I'll introduce him if he is. Mohammed Fahim, are you on the call?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, so Mohammed Fahim is a candidate for in Illinois for the 8th district, if I'm not mistaken. It's important because he's a Muslim candidate, and I wanted to invite him to speak from his perspective on how it is as a Muslim candidate. How are you engaging your community over in a different state, and how we can learn those lessons? And if you have a question for our panel and our esteemed guests, Sister Afaf and Shawyn Patterson-Howard. So Mohammed Fahim, if you could go ahead with your question and speak a little bit about your background.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon, Mayor. Good to see you over here. I wanted to run for the 22nd on the 2022 for the congressional race. But a quick feedback as to how I got into politics, as our local, Congressman Bill Foster said yesterday in a meet and greet that we had, that it's a late onset political activism for a lot of us. I ran for the local village board here a couple of years back because we had a situation where the village board was denying a permit for a local masjid that we wanted to start over here, even though the place that we were going to do the masjid in was a church for over 30 years that had closed down. We bought the property and the village board was not giving us a permit to open up as a mosque. So that is what got me into the political activism part of it. I ran for the village board, first time ever in my life, almost made it. I lost by 174 votes.
Wow.
Now, in the village of Plainfield, we have 1,168 registered Muslim voters. 86 came out to vote. A lot of reasons behind it. A lot of us are, first-time immigrants. When we come here, we are too busy getting set up in our lives and paying attention to how to make a living in the country, not as politically active as we are or we should be. But that got me thinking that, okay, I'm going to make a run for Congress. Filed for Congress to run in this time, but I withdrew in the primary because the existing The congressman who was there, the incumbent, threw everything that he had at me to get me knocked off. Long story short, I'm going to run again in 2022, but this time I'm kind of being a little bit more planned and going about it in a different way. Number one, we as Muslims have to be a part of society at large. We cannot live on an island in this country. This is our country. 3 years back, I started a nonprofit local over here. We're calling it as Aman, A-M-A-N, which means peace in Arabic, but stands for American Muslims Assisting Neighbors. So this is at the ground, grassroots level. What can we do in our own neighborhoods? Not at a 30,000 foot level that ISNA, ICNA, and all the other organizations are doing, but in your own neighborhood, how do you change the perception of Muslims as neighbors? That is coming in very handy. And also, October 1st, I started a new gig. We are calling it the Virtual American Town Hall. And this is obviously everything is virtual over now. This is a weekly meeting every Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Time. Anyone from across the country are welcome to join us. We have had 3 town halls so far. The website was launched on October 5th. We have already had around 1,500 views on the website. So we take 2 national issues, we take 2 local issues. And if you look at the local media or the national media, the media is sold out to vested interest. You either have the left or the right. And people are throwing money at the elections trying to buy a seat. Common people like you and I don't have a voice in the media. Why do I say the media? Because that's what my background was for a long time. I was in Houston for about 14 years. I was anchoring the morning news there for the International News Hour on radio. I was doing call-in talk radio also, had a couple of businesses. Give you one great example of the importance of voting, folks. There was a small town near Houston called as Baytown. I was there for a couple of years, had some business engagements over there. But the local mayor in Baytown, a Hispanic guy, he won by 1 vote. And I would always go to him and say, hey, mayor, you know what? That was me that got you elected as the mayor. But, I wanted to buy some commercial property over there, rehab it. The mayor was, right there to give me permissions. So a lot of things can happen with your 1 vote. And that is huge, that we have to understand that in this country, we have the power to make a difference. For the Virtual American Town Hall, our slogan is, it's our country, our voice. Come in and talk, and don't just come in with problems. Come to me with solutions. Our town hall on Thursday, we had a computer scientist who came in and talked about the importance of AI going forward. How many jobs are going to be impacted by AI? How can people get better jobs using AI? All these kind of things. For the last 4 years now, I've been running a consulting company called the Center for Strategic Solutions. Before that, I worked with the Illinois State Workforce Development Department for about 10 years as one of the directors. So many things that we can do as Muslims, but so many more things that we can do as Americans and then Muslims. What can we do? This is our country. We're not going back. But if we cannot make a contribution, then we are not going to be recognized. We have to stand up, take a stand. I heard some of the questions as to how do we know about the background of candidates running. I'll give you a couple of resources, which are very good. Number one, you can go to a website, www, of course, and that is going to be govtrack, T-R-A-C-K, govtrack.us/Congress/votes. That website is tracking the votes of every congressman on every issue. You can also go to a website called Ballotpedia, B-A-L-L-O-T-P-E-D-I-A, ballotpedia.org, where you can go in and you can put in the name of any congressperson or anybody. It'll come back and tell you everything. about who they are, what was their position on different issues. It'll give you links to their social media, to their websites and everything. So these are a couple of good resources that you can use to do your research. And don't be hung up on, okay, I'm a Democrat, okay, good. But if I see someone who is a better candidate, who is a Republican, I'm going to vote for him. It is not about party at all. I mean, in 1789, George Washington had said something very important. He said, you know, political parties are in it to win for themselves, not for the country. So we have to keep it in mind also. I'll give you one more example and I'll shut off because this has been a very long session. Our local mayor over here in near my home in Naperville, Steve Chirico, is a Republican. He's got a Biden-Harris sign in his front yard now. He says, locally, on the issues that impact us, I'm going to vote Republican. At the national level, I see that the Republican Party and their leadership is not espousing the cause of American citizens. So we have to be very, very, very well educated about it. The resources are there, folks. And if you don't know where to go, just talk to somebody in your local political activities and some local political activists. And it's very important for us to focus on local issues. National comes, but look at your school board, look at your sanitary district. 80% of your taxes come from local bodies. You have to have your foot in the door and a say there. National will take care of itself, but start off at the local level. Anything that I can do to help, feel free. Become a part of the Virtual American Town Hall. I would love for you all to, do local sessions in your part of, your neck of the woods over there. Bring in local people. We are all intelligent people. We have got solutions, man. But unless we have a voice, we're not going to be listened to. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And, please carry on. I'm listening.
Thank you, Muhammad Fahim.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Please go ahead.
I just want to first say thank you for Usama for putting the govtrack.us link in the chat. And I'm going to ask if Mr. Fahim, if you could send WCAI the other links of the virtual town halls, because it might have gone too quickly. And the other ones that if you could send it to us so we could share it with our members, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, I'll send it out to ours, and we have a website which is active. We are recording the Virtual American Town Halls, and we are putting it on YouTube and Facebook and other social media also.
Thank you.
I'll work with.
Thank you.
So just some side information. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just some side information, but important. Fahim is my maternal uncle. So
okay, great.
That's why I couldn't shut him down a little bit. Important information. So, but I wanted to get a perspective from a Muslim candidate, and I know Illinois has a lot of Muslims. And the point that my uncle made about the one vote, and also the populace in that particular district, but the turnout was so low, that is reflective across our entire nation. And it's so important. I think it was Muhammad Imaduddin who said, does our vote count? Yeah, of course it counts. That is one of the best examples. So very important to know. So thank you very much.
One more quick thing. I want to see more and more young people in our community become active in this social activism, get engaged in the political process. Because I ran, now my daughter is running for the Plainfield Village Trustee elections next year. She's already decided to file. We'll be out collecting petition signatures. The second generation have to take the lead and follow this path that we are laying out for them.
Thank you.
And just to add to that one thing, it's not just about running for office. Every municipality has town and village boards, boards for anything from land use, zoning, to just advisory, countywide. These are the types of things that I would say everyone in the community needs to apply and be a part of.
Absolutely.
And Brother Janish knows this. 3 years ago, I ran for office in White Plains. And I'll be very honest, I knew I would never win the election. It was in White Plains. We at the time, we didn't even have a mosque. But the reason that I ran was to ensure that in 2017, a Muslim got on the ballot, and I did. But it was one of the most eye-opening experiences, because I'll say this to everyone here. I had people slam the door in my face and tell me they will never vote for a Muslim ever. And, you know, someone asked me if I thought I'd win. And I said, look, the election takes place the day after 9/11. I had a really good idea what the outcome would be. But having said that, the reason I did it was not whether or not I won, but one day, inshallah, my children, my sons, my daughter may decide to run for office. And it has to be that whatever doors are closed in our faces have to be off their hinges by the time it's the next generation's turn. And the only way that will ever happen is to ensure that when we are involved in the community, we are helping our neighbors, because they have to really see a different face to Islam than the ones that they have internalized.
Absolutely. And I just want to quickly add it before I let you guys go, that I got 864 votes, and Plainfield is a heavily red town, but municipal elections are nonpartisan. So out of 864, 86 were Muslim votes. The rest was people in the community who had never heard of a guy named Mohammed Fahim, but I was doing Facebook Live every single day, a month before the election. And my neighbors came out to vote for me. Republicans, Democrats, whites, African Americans, Hispanic. These people realized the value that I could bring to the community, and they came out to vote. So we don't have to put ourselves up on an island that I'm only going to have Muslims vote for me. But if more Muslims had voted, I would have been on the Plainfield Village Board, the first non-white person ever to be elected. And I'm hoping that my daughter is going to be that in April of next year.
That's good. Thank you. We're going to go to our next section. But before we do, I wanted to see if we had any other questions for Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard, who's joined us, and Sister Afaf Nasher as well. If our moderators can just check, otherwise we're going to go to our next section, which is our final section.
There's no more questions coming.
No more questions? Okay, so have your questions queued up if you do have any more. Otherwise, let's listen to a few other elected officials. So, Saad, could you introduce the next batch of elected officials who are going to be speaking?
Certainly. Yeah, I believe it's the last 5 on our slate. Dan Romano is a candidate for Yonkers City Court Judge. Mondaire Jones is the Democratic nominee for New York's 17th Congressional District. Gina Jackson is sitting councilwoman of Greenberg. And Vera Shako is also a candidate for Yonkers City Court Judge. And lastly, we have Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins.
Osama, if you could play them out, please.
Coming right up, give me a sec.
Salam alaikum, my brothers and sisters. This is Dan Romano, candidate for the Yonkers City Court Judge. I urge all of you to vote. Please exercise this right. You can vote early voting, which begins on October 24th, or mail-in ballot, or you can in-person voting on November 3rd. Again, I remind everyone, please vote. It's your right to do so. Please exercise it. This is Dan Romano, candidate for Yonkers City Court Judge. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mondaire Jones, and I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress in New York's 17th District, which includes parts of Westchester and all of Rockland County, where Nita Lowy is retiring. And I want to encourage everyone to vote. You can vote in 3 different ways: by absentee ballot using the mail, early and in person beginning on Saturday, October 24th, or in person on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd.
My name is Gina Jackson, Greenberg Town Councilwoman. I want to tell you how important it is for you to utilize the power of your voice by voting on Tuesday, November 3rd. With all the unrest, systemic racism, all the inequality that's happening in today's America, we need change. And in order for us to achieve that change, we need to make sure that we go out and that we vote in today's election. voted here in the United States, we encourage you to please do not be in fear. Make sure you come and exercise your right to vote. So we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Vera Shako, candidate for Yonkers City Court Judge. We have an important election this year, and whether you vote by absentee ballot, early voting, or voting on election day, make your plan now so we can go out, vote, and make a difference.
This is Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. Every vote counts, and your vote is important. So please make a voting plan. Whether you vote by absentee ballot, where you need to submit an application, you early vote, where you can vote from October 24th anywhere in Westchester County at an early voting location, or you vote in person on November 3rd at your normal polling site. Please make sure to get out and vote. Every vote counts, and your vote is important. Thank you so much, and get out there and vote.
We have a question.
Go ahead, I think we have a question.
We have a question from Afaf Nasher to our mayor. Do you have a liaison with the Muslim community in Mount Vernon?
We don't have a specific liaison because we have so many rich connections already. So we have natural connections. That would be our Chief Odindo, that would be our Chief Salahuddin, that would be our Saad Siddiqui, my brother who's on here now, our Minister Arthur Muhammad, and our Iman Musa. So those are people who we are in communication with every day that allow us to have deeper and richer tentacles and in-reach into the Muslim community. So for me, it's not something where I don't have a relationship with the community already, where we would need a special person who helps us reach someone. Like I don't have a special person who does it for me for the Hispanic community or the Caribbean community. When you have relationships and they're pretty organic, you don't need one person as a portal. I did celebrate Ramadan this year. I fasted for the entire season. I did that along with my Muslim friends here in the community. We celebrated and we broke fast here in my office in City Hall. It was socially distant and we had the right number of people in the midst of COVID, right? You were there, Saad. He helped me put it together. So, specifically to say that I have a liaison, one person, no. But if you feel that we have a need for that, then that's something we could look at. But I think our organic relationships and our regular communication really didn't require something as ceremonial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Afaf, did that answer your question, or do you have any comments on that? Specifically, do you feel that there is a need to have something? Because I have a similar question, but I think you're best placed to ask that one.
So I respect the mayor's position in regards to organic relationships, and it's great not to have one single person to be a portal. You know the local politics better. I leave that to the community with regards to the ear of your local politicians, how accessible they are and how the interests are brought forth. And I would just say that in terms of things, for example, resources, I mean, she mentioned she doesn't have liaisons to many communities which she's connected to. Should there be one, we want to make sure that we have equal access. That really is something that's important. That's how our resources get divvied. And we want to make sure that our communities also get that opportunity as well. But really, it's up to the community to really sort of evaluate what kind of access you have to the halls of power, not just for the mayor, by the way, but to state, local, and federal officials as well. And it's also a training ground as well for young people who want to get involved in politics. One way to be able to do that is to be able to see how things operate on the inside, and being a liaison can help with that as well, or some sort of community representatives can also help with that as well.
We also have, just so you know, we do have here in Mount Vernon, and I think she would probably be the first person elected to the judiciary is a Muslim female, our sister Michelle Johnson Muhammad. So we have women, we have Muslims who are elected to office here in the city of Mount Vernon. We have them on staff. And I don't want to sound like 45 who says we have good relationships with the Blacks, but I think we have very good free-flowing relationships with the Muslim community. But like I said, we're more than happy to set up something more formal if people do not feel that they have the right level of access.
And Sister Afaf, just to add some more information, presently in Westchester County, there are only 3 Muslim elected officials countywide. One is Sister Nichelle Johnson, who is actually a judge. She is the first and only judge who is a practicing Muslim in this county. The other is Brother Vidat Gashi, who is the county legislator. And lastly, and I believe her name is Sister Anadi Serar, who is on the Pelham Town Board. But that is the extent of Muslim representation that we have in the county. And this kind of goes to another point. So Mayor Howard has organic relationships with members of the Muslim community. And in Yonkers, Mayor Mike Spano has a Muslim advisory board. And Westchester County is taking its own steps to have some outreach, formalized outreach to the Muslim community. But there are actually in Westchester 42 different municipalities. Just think about that. And the overwhelming dozens of them do not have any formalized outreach to the Muslim community. White Plains, I've lived here for in excess of 20, almost 28 years. We don't have any formal outreach, and we've gone from having a mosque to not having a mosque to only recently having a mosque again. So that, to a large extent, going back to just a question that I saw in terms of public officials being responsive to the voices and the needs of and the interests of the Muslim community, that actually falls on our shoulders to ensure that they know what our needs and our interests are. And to the extent that we want more Muslims being put into office, that also comes from us. We have to cultivate the interest within our community and run candidates. It's not enough to rely on people to represent our interests. We should have people from within the community running and representing our own interests. And let it be said that it's also extremely important to have more Muslims go for the judiciary, to get on the bench and actually show that we can apply the Constitution and keep our faith at home, but not have it govern, and because it feeds into that perception. And that goes back to the message that Brother Arz's uncle had been saying about community involvement on the most local level.
I just want to add also, we have maybe a related question from Nawal, if anybody has seen it in the chat in terms of what WCAI and politicians consider as Muslim issues. We have spoken in schools to children, to students, and also we have spoken to school boards, just wanting to raise attention to the issues of Islamophobia. And in one situation, speaking to the Yonkers School Board, it was felt to be too political to even put up, for example, posters that were trying to address the issue of Islamophobia. So those posters were not put up in the Yonkers schools, even though it was brought to the attention of the school board. We have also advocated on behalf of local mosques in Yonkers. The Islamic Community Center of Mid-Westchester was a mosque in Colonial Heights, Yonkers, that bought a house, a building to operate as a mosque. That building was given landmark status by the Colonial Heights Tax Association of Taxpayers. We advocated on behalf of that mosque that they have that landmark status removed. We were not successful with that. And that did delay the working on the building up to the present, where they're finally able to have some work done on that mosque. Another issue is having to do with bullying of children in the schools that are Muslim or Jewish or Sikh. And in many cases, the school boards do not specifically address bullying that is of a religious nature. It falls under just a general category of bullying. And we would like to see that documented better, because there is fear of reprisals if Muslim families bring it to the school board's attention. And so that's another issue that could receive a little bit more attention. along with the current unfortunate federal and or state restrictions on placing refugees into the United States, we have local refugee organizations that have placed Muslim families. And we would like to obviously those numbers increase to allow more refugees in and to allow them to settle wherever they are welcome to settle. And so that's another issue we want to continue to pay attention on, the restrictions on refugees and immigrants and the placement thereof. So those are some, if anybody can think of other issues I didn't mention that are of concern to the Muslim community. Oh, I'd add a final one. In terms of housing, housing is just an overall big issue. But with some Muslim families, they have large families. And so really a 2-bedroom apartment is still too small for a Muslim family. So we really need housing that is open to larger families and to allow them to have obviously affordable housing. But that issue of housing is another issue I'd like to bring to everybody's attention as well.
That's, you know, the housing issue is quite interesting. I can tell you here in Westchester, really that the only places that have 3- and 4-bedroom apartments still are your public housing locations. And even many of them cut those apartments up, and as they've renovated and upgraded, have turned them into maybe 2-bedroom apartments and split them and changed them. So housing and housing for large families, whether Muslim, African-American, Hispanic, Latino, all families is definitely a major issue. You know, I guess I'm kind of getting used to being elected. I've worked in human services and social justice for the past 30 years. And part of the work that I did with the YMCA of the USA, which is the largest not-for-profit in the country, is that I led a committee to create a white paper and a toolkit called Engaging the Faith Communities. And the large reason why I did that is, you know, really around how did we engage the Muslim faith community. When I was an executive director at the Y here in Mount Vernon and then CEO of the YMCA in Yonkers, one of the things that we did was create programming specific for our Muslim community, because you have the trust gap, you have the program gap, you have the cultural competency gap. And so when it came to programming, we saw a lot of our young Muslim boys coming to learn how to swim, but our young Muslim girls could not. And it's because they could not be undressed and uncovered in co-ed places. So we had to create special times for them to come swimming. And in Mount Vernon, we had a big viewing window into the pool that we covered on those days to make sure that no one could stand and look at the young ladies while they were learning how to swim. And they would not be uncovered. So coming from a Pentecostal faith background where our clothing was very traditionally moderate and we covered our heads, that was something that I understood and that I appreciated. And that really helped to open up the relationships for me many years ago within the Muslim community, because our young women, they wanted to swim. And that's a health issue, it's a safety issue. And it was something so simple, but yet so important. And so I think it's just important that as we think of programming opportunities throughout the community and working with our schools, like I worked with the Andalusia School in Yonkers for years as well, then, you know, these are just some of the things that we have to think about when making sure that we have programming specific to the Muslim community, and that even our, the foods that we're serving at community and cultural events, you know, are culturally competent and not offensive, and that everyone can partake.
I also want to add, regarding criminal justice reform and police reform, we are very conscious of any type of training, wherever that training may be taking place, whether it's with the Mount Vernon Police Department or the Yonkers Police Department or the Police Academy of Westchester, that there not be Islamophobic training which labels the general Muslim community as being dangerous. And part of that is the Countering Violent Extremism funding, which really puts a suspicious mark on the Muslim community that encourages surveillance or informants. And so we want to make sure that some of that training is as neutral as possible and does not raise issues of Islamophobia. In terms of criminal justice reform in the prisons, we want to make sure any Muslims in the prison have their religious needs met. That's an important issue. And of course, for returning citizens, to have more programs for reentry into society for anybody who is leaving the prison industrial complex. And that covers all people, but especially we want to be mindful of those in the Muslim community. Anybody want to comment on these issues? Please do.
I think Khusro, you have a comment. So this is an open discussion right now. So anyone is entitled to speak. Khusro, why don't you go ahead with your comment?
Yeah. So, you know, Chuck has done a really wonderful job in highlighting all the issues that relate to Islamophobia. However, there is one big, well-kept secret. And I'm pointing this out. This is the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that we are aware what our issues are, but nobody else is aware what those issues are. What I would have liked our representatives who send their recordings to say, and the only exception I make is the mayor of Mount Vernon, who's here and who is showing up instead of saying, we have a problem over here. The problem is, I would like our representatives to say, Islamophobia is a problem. I am aware that Islamophobia exists. It is unacceptable to me. I would like to do something about it. We have not heard the representatives say that. So our challenge is at the moment to make our representatives aware and for them to come out and say that they recognize that it is a problem. So we are at a very preliminary stage of Muslim activism. And that's the point I want to highlight over here.
Great point.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go, Bashir.
I wanted to direct attention. I'm working with the Governor Cuomo's task force on police reform. And one of the issues that I bring up frequently is the case in the general community and the Muslim community of domestic violence, which for some reason, there has been an increase since people have been sequestered into their home. And I wanted to know from the mayor, what kind of programs do you have? You mentioned programs for girls. I wanted to know about batterers interventions and programs like that for young men who get a criminal record for domestic violence and they're sent to prisons or jails, and they really don't get an intervention as to teach them to walk in the victim's shoes. So they come out of the prisons with the same mindset they went to the prisons with. The Federal Department of Justice has indicated that batterers are usually accepted by their intimate partners, sometime from 7 to 10 times. Is there anything that we can do in Mount Vernon, Greenburgh, White Plains, so forth and so on, to provide some kind of education for these young men who go into jail and come back out of the jail with the same mindset and are let loose to the same family situation?
So interestingly enough, I'm a social worker, and one of my first, yes, my first social work job was with the National Organization for Victim Assistance in Washington, D.C. And I ran one of their outpost stations at one of the D.C. police substations, and I was a victim advocate. I am also a survivor of teenage domestic violence, so I get it very, very clearly and very personally. So here in the city of Mount Vernon, and so far as city government, we do not have formalized programs, but we do a lot through partnerships with the Family Services of Westchester, with my sister's place. Family Services of Westchester has a reentry program and has a fatherhood program and a men's program. Then we also do a lot of things informally through just the brothers in the community. Everything is not necessarily done through an agency because not everyone trusts or feels comfortable with agencies, and they give credence, and we have other people who are in the gate, you know, who are gatekeepers in the community. So brothers like our brother Arthur Muhammad and, you know, other ones really kind of work with us. We have the SNUG program also, and SNUG is something that's been around. So as people are coming back into the community and they're being released from prison, we are aware of who's coming home and what some of their issues are. And we're working with them. So we also have a reentry committee here in the county of Westchester, and our Deputy Commissioner, Jennifer Lackard, who is a civilian, is someone who's worked in the reentry space for the past 10, 15 years. I've worked in reentry for about 25 years. So domestic violence is a part of her responsibility at the police department. We also work with WestCOP and the Victims Assistance Program. So we have the partnerships that are in place, but domestic violence is very pervasive. And it's not just one place that can serve as an entry point, but it is something that we have to be willing to have conversations with at every turn. And we are also working with our houses of faith on that, because oftentimes people in houses of faith, that's the first place that they'll reach out to. But because the houses of faith are oftentimes kind of acculturated to not deal with that issue, people don't always feel comfortable coming forward there either. So we know that domestic violence is rising. We know that it is a big problem, especially in the midst of COVID, and many people are kind of kept home with their partners who have displayed violence, not just physically, but domestic violence is much more about power and control. It's the verbal abuse, it's the threats, it's the power and control over the kids, it's the power and control over finances and financial mobility. So it's, you know, sex, and physical relationships, even when it's with a husband and a wife. So all of those things can be very difficult. And so as we speak about domestic violence, we have to make sure we're not speaking about it in just terms of physical violence, but the whole spectrum of domestic violence, so that people really understand that they might be victims, even though they have not necessarily been hit, or they're only hit, quote unquote, occasionally and not so bad.
You're right. Okay. Because I work with men in terms of domestic violence, or what they call abusive behaviors. Mm-hmm. And I work with them through Mount Vernon. I have family there, and White Plains also, and throughout New York State, even going so far as to work with HIV/AIDS and domestic violence. And from what I see,
we need to connect, because I've been working in AIDS since '85. So we might need to have a side conversation, everything from Ryan White, Title I, Title II. So, you know, I was director of AIDS services here for Mount Vernon, and the first person of color to serve as a case manager at AIDS-related community services, which was the second largest AIDS organization.
Okay, because I'm concerned about the reports that I get from Muslim men in terms of a lack of service.
Okay.
And returning them back to home with all this confusion and everything like that. And also what happens to them in terms of adjudication, the law, so forth and so on. So yes, we will connect. Okay. My name is Bashir, Dr. Bashir.
I'm Shawyn Howard, right here at City Hall.
I know
it's the
you.
easiest way to get me.
I know you.
Okay.
All right, we're into our last 10 minutes. So I think we have another question. I'm not sure who's got it, but if the moderators can check. Do we have another question? I'd like to ask a question.
Noel had a question. Yes, Noel, would you like to ask your question?
Noel, why don't you go ahead with your question, and then I'll come to mine.
I don't see her. I think she might have left. Oh yeah, no, there she is.
You got it?
Okay, I'll read it. In your experience, have you found that Muslims in Westchester felt that public officials are responsive to their voices and needs and interests? And what do the WCAI and politicians consider as Muslim issues? Actually, Chuck answered that.
Right.
Okay, so then there were no more questions, but I would like to say something, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Deborah.
I joined WCAI because it's an interfaith organization. As a Jewish woman whose Jewish history goes back millennia of being discriminated against, and the joke amongst Jews is they try to kill us, they didn't, we survived, let's eat. So you have extremists in every single area, whatever it is, whether it's religion or politics. And what is so important about WCAI is we see through the extremists to the humanity of each group that's represented in WCAI. And we understand that whatever our background is, right now, one of the groups that is getting the most amount of attacking is the Muslims. And I think that is why it is so important that everybody on this call, you're more than welcome to come and join of our groups. I'm sure Chuck would say it at the end, but just in case, I'm saying it for all of us. You're more than welcome. We meet the fourth Thursday, and the information goes out on our mailing list. We need your voices. We need your thoughts. We need your cares. We need your input. And everything we do has to be joint and united, and the recognition that almost every group in this country is a minority, and we have to support the rights, the civil rights and the human rights of each other.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap up. I just wanted to ask one last question to Mayor Patterson-Howard and Sister Afaf, just before we do wrap up. I listened to certain buzzwords, and I'm very keen. I'm working with my friend Saad, who has just left, so he can't join in on this conversation. But we're looking to create some kind of Muslim pact, especially for this area. It's very important that right now, the Muslim connection, you talked about it, Mayor Patterson-Howard, that you rely on natural connections that happen, and that's how you get a feel for what's important for the Muslim community. Sister Afaf, you mentioned certain things as well, and I think it was Mayor Patterson-Howard, you mentioned toolkit. Is there anything that you are promoting where Muslims like myself who are looking to create this kind of organization locally at a grassroots level, not nationally, but locally, to try and create awareness to make sure that our elected officials take care of our needs? For example, Chuck mentioned, and we have members of the mosque in question right now, the ICCMW, the Islamic Cultural Society of Mid-Westchester, had a issue with their mosque, a property that was bought, that was landmarked, and we were really pulled through the mire to try and take something and make it into a place of worship, something very simple. And the place where it's located, it's nicknamed Holy Hill because there's a church opposite, there's a church diagonal to it, but yet a mosque that was really there within the vicinity of all of these other places of worship was seen as a problem. We felt very, very violated by that. It was difficult for us to comprehend why this couldn't become a mosque, why we couldn't expand when those around us of different faiths were given the opportunity to do that. So maybe a pact or maybe awareness within these communities at a grassroots level is what we need to empower, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, on how to reach out to our elected officials, to get them on site, to understand what we have as a need. How do you feel, you mentioned toolkit, how do you feel we can engage better? And is there something that we should be referencing in order to try and create this grassroots level movement so that the next landmarking doesn't happen? So that question is for Mayor Patterson-Howard, and then I'd like to hear from Sister Afaf as well, from a non-political perspective on how we can do that.
So from a non-political perspective, like I said, one of the things that I benefited from working in the YMCA is having a national reach. And so there are different cities and communities that I worked with throughout the country that have very large Muslim American communities and that have done a lot of work around building partnerships, relationships, programs, agreements. I don't want to say necessarily memorandums of understanding, but have done a lot of very intentional, strategic, and thoughtful work. And so what I will do is I will reach back into my community partnerships and relationships and have them share with me some of the toolkits that were created, because, you know, absolutely, especially out in like Minneapolis, Minnesota, places like that, where there's a very large community, they did a lot of work. They did a lot of work quite a few years ago to make sure that those communities were more inclusive, to address issues of Islamophobia, and to make sure that the community was not just integrated, but inclusive. And that's what I say, you know, people talk about integration, but there's a big difference between being integrated and having a seat at the table, having a voice at the table. And that's why I said I don't necessarily have an advisory board or a person. You know, I found out from those things that oftentimes that makes the community feel like they have to go to those 3 or 4 people in order to gain access to you. And depending on those people, that can be a good thing or it can be a not so good thing. So we just try and keep it open so that there is no blockage and that people know that there's kind of low level entrance to gaining access to the government or to me as the mayor. Like I said, the mayor thing is new for me. I've always been a community organizer and a community activist. So, you know, I might have to put something more formal in place. Maybe I'm not looking at it big enough, but I worked for 30 years in Westchester and it's never been hard for anyone to access me. But for something a little bit different and more formal, I will reach out to some of my former colleagues and get them to share some of the toolkits, because they did develop specific toolkits for engaging and working with and building bridges with the Muslim community.
Thank you. Sister Afaf, if you could talk from a non-political perspective, but how Muslim communities can engage better, and is there an organization like CAIR or somebody that we could reach out to, or that could reach out to our mosques to create this toolkit to engage better in civic duty?
Yes, so Jazakallah khair. You know, it's good to ask this type of question because it's very proactive and very specific, and it allows us to jump right into it rather than simply leave the program without a go-to action, right? So number one, don't reinvent the wheel. There are organizations that do some of the work. Of course, you can make it more encompassing. So learn what organizations out there are doing at least some of the work. So for example, CAIR does do to some level some of the work with regards to registration, with regards to providing toolkits that include legislative scorecards, right? So picking out policies and legislations that matter to us. So those are important things that are already available. Number two is identify on your local level what are the matters that are localized to your particular area, right? And then those are things that you can do that you don't have to rely on CAIR to do, because those are very localized. So get in contact with those active folks in your community. And by the way, I'm very familiar with the masjid and the landmarking, right, from the inception. And I always remind people that discrimination and those that seek to discriminate can get extremely creative. That house of worship had been there on the market for years and years, running completely down, and nobody cared anything about it until the Muslims of the community bought it, and all of a sudden it became a beloved jewel that needed to be landmarked, right? So having somebody at that time, you know, with the mayor's ear, or having somebody at that time within the right city agencies would have made all the difference. We know there was a lot of back-end politics happening with that. So being involved on very, very local level, my brother, means, for example, engaging with your community members to visit your local elected officials And that doesn't just have to happen during election time, right? We don't have to be, completely hyper on civic engagement only during election time. So actually making an appointment and taking yourself and other community leaders or just members of the public and allowing them to have a direct entry physically, as well as, just the opportunity to speak to those elected officials is really important. And that's something that you can do very easily, right? Just, again, making an appointment with your local officials to make sure that they're seeing the faces, the names of those that are participating civically. And then, of course, the third thing, besides Muslim advocacy days on a national level, and then again on a local level, and providing toolkits, is making sure that people are actually registered to vote, but paying attention to other things as well that come along with it. So I'll give you an example. Language access at the polls. We do have a high percentage of our Muslim community which has language access issues. How many of them know that you can take somebody with you to provide assistance with regards to language, right? Mm-hmm. Does your local community allow for poll workers, for example? And if they do those poll workers represent your community in terms of, for example, the languages that are needed, right? So paying attention to these details as well really helps to impact the change very quickly, because you will feel more comfortable, and we've had issues with this. We've had local elections that have been decided because translators weren't permitted, into that room, and they were supposed to be permitted. So just knowing the local issues and your community best, and then how to provide them access is really, really important. So choosing your issues and then seeking it, not just from a policy perspective, but actually seeing it all the way through to implementation. And then, of course, once you get the right person elected, hopefully, inshallah, having that accountability. So it's a long-term game plan. It's not, a 1 or 2 day thing. It's being engaged between election times, getting people on local boards that are making daily decisions on behalf of the community, getting more people involved civically that are informed, and making sure policies exist on the other side to give them access.
Great. Thank you. That's an excellent answer and great advice. We're at 5:30 and we are at time. And I know that there are a lot of burning questions, and this has been an excellent, excellent event. So I want Chuck, our president, to take us out. Chuck, any final words before we call time?
You have to unmute.
No, I just want to thank everybody. I know the only other thing we had is just some polls. If we wanted to finish with any type of poll reading, our numbers have dropped from our original number that we had, but I thank everyone for coming. I think there might be a couple of appropriate polls, Janesh, to see what impact this had on those still here. So maybe it'd be a good idea if I can bring those polls up and we could just see.
We'll call them back.
For example, the effectiveness of this event. If anybody wants to respond to how this how this event affected your decision to vote, it did not have a big effect. It did have a big effect. I already had my mind made up, and the event did not make a difference. So, as I launched this, if we could see the launching of this. Yeah. So it looks like it did have a big effect in raising consciousness. For some, it did not. Just 13%, 1 out of the 8, 7 out of the 8. We have about 8 people who voted, 8 of 19. So all in all, this was a helpful for us to know. I'm going to just end the polling for this. I'm going to go to another one. This is an important one for us. How did you hear about this event? Did you hear about it from family, friends, the flyers, social media? How did you find it, or other? So let me launch this as well. How did you hear about this event? Okay.
interesting to see social media not really get too much. I mean, that's what we're...
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether that's because, I don't know whether family and friends communicated through social media and they're giving the family and friends. I don't know, but it is interesting, family and friends, word of mouth maybe.
Yeah.
That's form of advertising.
Yep.
I'm going to end that one and just see, this is another interesting one. Do you usually vote in local elections outside of presidential election year?
I think it was made very clear today that that is so important to do. And I think one of the big takeaways of this meeting, that it's not just the presidential, it's every election from the local to the federal.
I don't think anybody is voting for the first time, but I'll ask it anyway. Is anybody voting for the first time?
Good.
Okay, well, we hope, especially for those voting for the first time, that again, this presentation was helpful for you and giving you a lot of resources. And then the final one is, I'll end the polling on this, is who will you vote for if people want to express their opinion on who they would like to vote for?
This is anonymous as well, so just let people
know.
So it looks like we have a Biden
round
in our local ones, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe basically we covered yes, we covered pretty much the different polls we had. We thank you for that feedback. This is recorded, so the results of these will eventually be part of the recording. So again, thank you, Janesh, for being our host and our master of ceremonies. Thank you to Saad, who's no longer here, Bashir and Khusro for their opening remarks. Sister Afaf for bringing all the information from CAIR to us, which was valuable information. Mayor Shawyn Patterson-Howard being our only live public official. We thank you so much for joining us and contributing so much to today's discussion. We hope to continue the conversation with everyone, all people concerned with these issues in the Muslim community as we move forward. So with that, if there's no further comments from anybody.
I'd just like to add, Chuck, if anyone wants that information that we were talking about, the websites, the metrics, we will be posting this information on YouTube, and on our Facebook page as well. So follow us. If you search for WCAI or Westchester Coalition Against Islamophobia, you'll be finding us on social media, and we'll post this information there. Do share it with everybody, but that's where you're going to find this. And please join our mailing list as well. So if you email WCAI@socialjusticepartners.net, WCAI@socialjusticepartners.net, then we'll add you to our mailing list and get you this information.
Yes, and Mohammed just reminded us it took a couple of political runs for Barack Obama to eventually Barack Hussein Obama to finally be elected president.
Right. So. I was going to mention that, but we moved so swiftly.
Yeah, if at first you don't succeed, try again.
That's right.
Thank you, Noah, for your participation and everybody who joined us today.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you,
so much. Everybody.